it takes a while to put it all together. In the meantime, Dirk's on the road with this super group in Germany, and I'm bugging about files, and he's playing in front of thousands of people every night. He's like, oh, my friend Till, I like him, but it's a little bit of a pain in the rear end there. But it got us on TV, and he was over the moon about it.
Welcome to It Doesn't Take a Genius.
Marshall is not here. And that means that I can talk to whoever I want to. And I have my friend Till Kahrs on today's episode of It Doesn't Take a Genius. Hi, Till.
Great to see you. And by the way, congratulations on 300 episodes. Oh. Amazing. And you guys turned lemons into lemonade with this podcast. Wow. Awesome. Congrats on that. Really.
Well, I appreciate that. Mike is, I have to say, is a driving force because as COVID started, he said, wait a minute. I don't want to just rest while we're doing this. Let's do something.
I hear you. Let's do something productive, man. I tell you.
well, speaking of productive, that's kind of why you're on the podcast, is because to give our listeners a little bit of a background here, we're going to be talking about presentation skills, positive mindset, how making connections and taking opportunities when they come has really a huge success factor for you. It's something that you train on, but I have to give the background of how we even got to that, because I met you, I think, Till, it must have been 2011.
Yeah, that's about right. That's what I was thinking. 2011, great project that we were both on.
We were on a great project with Ford Motor Company, and I don't remember that if it was you who said it or somebody else, but basically you were introduced to me as, this is Till Kahrs. He's been doing automotive training for a long time. He has he has top 10 hits in Germany. So
yeah, that's right.
Come again?
Yeah.
So that was that's how I was introduced to you.
He's the Garth Brooks of Germany.
The Garth Brooks of Germany. I mean, but not shameless, and that's what I've appreciated. I see what I
love
did.
It. Oh, okay. Thanks. Boom.
Boom. Okay, so but let's give a quickly, just for folks who don't know you, a little bit of an arc of your really varied career, because you've had successes in a lot of different areas. But would you say it starts with your time in the liquor business?
Yeah, pretty much. I started as a national accounts manager in the wine and spirits industry. And I got a great job right out of college with the Gallo Wine Company, which is, most people don't know, that's the largest wine company in the world.
Oh,
and it's a family-owned business, by the way, which is really interesting.
Huh.
But they're known for their training, believe it or not. A lot of people get trained at Gallo, and then they move on, as I did, to Seagram's. But it's really interesting. The recruiter for the Gallo Wine Company came to UC Irvine, where I did my undergraduate degree. And I was interviewing with all kinds of sales companies, hospital supplies, dental supplies, financial products, insurance, everything. Because people say, oh, Till, you'd be great in sales. You're a fun guy and all this kind of stuff. And the Gallo guy I was interviewing with him, real nice guy, a guy named John Miller, never forget him. And he was their big recruiter out here on the West Coast. And he said, hey, Till, look, this is my last appointment of the day. And just be honest with me. If you won the lottery, what would you really, really want to do? Forget about the wine business. Forget about this stuff. And I thought I'd take a chance. And I said, Mr. Miller, do you want me to be really honest with you? And he said, yes. I said, well, I'd want to be a rock star or a stand-up comic. And he said, you know what? You'd be perfect for a national accounts restaurant division. So he was really there to recruit for retail, grocery store and liquor store stuff, which I wasn't really interested in, but hotel restaurant stuff, national accounts, that was interesting to me, Yeah. So, and I never thought, I'm going to be a rock star, anything like that. It was just kind of something flippant that I said. I did some stand-up comedy in college, and I went to the Comedy Store a couple times, but that kind of got into training later, because you want to be an edu-trainer. You don't want to be boring or an inter-trainer, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I was in the liquor business for about 10 years, and there were about 12 companies, and 12 merged into about 2 or 3. And they eliminated all their national accounts programs on the restaurant side. And the last company I was with said, "Hey, we want you, we like you, we want you to be in the retail side of the business." And it's like, no, no, thanks, I don't want to do that. And I hadn't started a family yet, didn't have any kids, I wasn't married. I thought, I've been suppressing this music stuff
Hmm.
forever. I want to write great songs.
Hmm.
So I had written some songs that I thought were pretty good. And I went to a couple of workshops in Hollywood, LA, right by the Capitol Records building, where
Oh,
they'll
neat.
throw you out immediately, if you kind of stink, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they thought I had something. And I started out as a songwriter. And back in the day, in the 90s, the early 90s and late 80s, what you do is you make demo tapes.
Mm-hmm.
And I hired this guy, Marty Rifkin, who's an extremely talented musician who's worked with Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty, Jewel, and all these people.
Hmm.
And one time the singer didn't show up to sing one of my songs. And he said, "Well, why don't you give it a shot?" And I was thought, I'm pretty good at karaoke nights. I'll give it a shot. And Marty said, "You know what? You got a pretty good voice." And I thought, I can do the public speaking thing. I can do the training thing and do the stand-up thing. Maybe I can also, be a performing artist, recording artist. So one thing led to another. And I mean, I sent out, thousands and thousands of tapes. It seems like certainly hundreds of tapes, chromium tapes back in the day.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to show your folks this because it's not about me having a record deal, but all these are my rejection letters from record companies right
That's
here.
That's awesome.
And sometimes I give motivational talks and I go, look at all these. And I played tennis on a pretty high level in high school. And I just remembered, I'd always stay in the match. I wasn't necessarily the greatest player, but I'd never give up. So
Mm-hmm.
my message kind of is, it's analogous from my success as a tennis player, is keep the balls in the line, keep it going. Don't hit the ball out. And just maybe you'll win the match,
Yeah.
So that's kind of the journey that I took. And believe me, it wasn't easy, and I got a lot of rejection, but
Right.
I just kept trying. And one of the things you said early on is too, and it was kind of an 80s phrase, but networking. I stayed in touch with people because I ultimately got a record deal in Germany.
Right.
I stayed in touch with some extremely talented musicians over there and producers. Then I got a record deal with a group called Blue Moon because of a great guitarist I know over there named Dirk Schlag, who is just a monster producer, musician, introduced me to another record label. And then I started writing songs for other artists in Europe after, my record career, kind of my personal career. We had a couple hits, and then, it's just tough to stay up there,
Yeah, sure.
And I kind of ran its course. And then fortunately, I was still able to keep in the training business, which is my bread and butter, because it's tough to really make a living in the music business. And I kind of pulled it off, So anyway, I'm talking a lot here.
It's a couple. First off, do you know German?
I speak German. I speak German fluently. My parents are German immigrants. They immigrated when I was one, but I always spoke German at home, which is pretty cool because I got to know my grandparents and speak with them.
Wow.
So that worked out kind of well. Yeah.
And another, I mean, just the whole thing is a very LA story to me because,
sure.
You're talking about, I went to, a class down from Capitol Records and I, met this guy and so, and the guy knew the guy and
that's how it works. The guy knew another.
Right.
Honestly, that's exactly how it works. I mean, straight up, exactly right.
Speaking of guys, you had told me before, I'm just realizing this, but you knew a member of Berlin.
Yeah. A guy named John Crawford. I actually played tennis with John. He was on our tennis team. And I don't think he even played. We never talked about music. I didn't know him real well, but he ended up, the story goes, I think he was in a, and I want to do it justice here. I'm sorry, John, if I don't say this the right way, but I think he was in a car accident and part of the rehab, or he broke a leg or something. He started playing guitar. And he started Berlin. And then another guy, Chris Buck, got an Oscar for Frozen. He was on our tennis team too.
Good grief.
El
That,
Dorado High School in Placentia, California.
so
So
my brother lives in L.A. and he moved out there for some. He was going to get a doctorate at UCLA. He got a full ride to get a geophysics
wow,
PhD. He was
wow,
really sharp, but he ended
wow,
up.
yeah.
I feel like every single person out there just ends up somehow associated with the entertainment industries of some kind, and so he ended up working on some sets, and he
You you
he
want to
can
hear
drop some
something?
names like that.
You want to hear something really crazy? I live here in Irvine,
Yeah,
which is California, which is south of Los Angeles.
yeah.
And a guy moved in next door to me, and his name is Lee Farrell. Older gentleman at the time, a really super, super nice guy. He's a piano player for the Righteous Brothers.
Oh my gosh.
And well, check this out. And he says, my son's going to be on Saturday Night Live. And I thought, sure, I'm
Oh,
going to be
no
on
way.
Saturday Night Live. You know who his son is? Will Ferrell.
Are you serious?
I'm not kidding. And I've met Will a couple of times. By the way, you meet your heroes. Sometimes you never know. Nicest guy in the world.
Is that
One of the
right?
nicest guys you ever want to meet. A lot of times you meet people. And another guy, Clint Black, who I love. He's my
Yeah.
favorite country guy. Super nice guy. So
Oh, that's
my
great.
heroes have been nice.
That's
But
great.
anyway, I meet Will Ferrell. And this is interesting because I was thinking about it. Remember Caesar Milan? He had that thing, the dog whisperer.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and I was teaching public speaking, and I thought, interesting. They're talking about dog behavior, bad dog behavior, good dog behavior, before and after. And I came up with this thing called the Speak Doctor. I have a trailer that's on
Oh,
my
yeah.
YouTube channel, and I thought, what about public speaking? It's the number one fear people have.
Hmm.
Show them when they're really bad or they kind of suck, and then
Yep.
they work with the Speak Doctor and they get better. That could be fun. So I told Lee about it, and he said, "You know what? Let me talk to my son about it. It sounds like a pretty good idea." And I put a little one sheet together, a little proposal, and I met with Creative Art CAA, Creative
Oh,
Artists
yeah.
Agency. I'm getting so excited.
Yeah.
I met with them twice, and they thought it was a great idea, and then it never came together. But I actually had a meeting with CAA twice, which,
Wow.
if you know anything about entertainment, is you can't get that meeting.
I
So
do.
talk about everybody's in entertainment in LA. You're
Yep.
not kidding.
I was involved briefly with an NIL startup, and there were a couple pitch meetings in LA with CA, and it was uh, the fact that they got to that was like this Herculean effort. So I know exactly of what you speak, and I want to tell you like three stories that have nothing to do with you and what we're talking about.
That's good. I'd
But
rather talk about you anyway.
well, I'm not. I'm not. I mean, I'm not gonna.
No,
I'm not
no,
gonna tell
no,
them all.
no.
But
It's too
well,
much
I
about
will
me.
tell
But
you
anyway,
one though. I have.
I can't wait.
It's interesting because it involves the car business, which I want to talk about here in a second. But I had a car dealer that I worked for years ago, and a retired car dealer worked for him, and he was over a big department, sort of in his retirement years, if you will. And he just had the best stories. And I'm just going to tell you, not a single one of them were false. I got to meet a couple of his kids and verify some things. The man just had an exceptional life. And it was full of tragedy, trauma, etc.
Yeah, sure.
His dad tried to kill him. He ran
Wow,
away from home as a child, all these
wow,
things. But he
wow,
ends up in Vietnam, and to do what he had to do in Vietnam, he said, I would imagine my girlfriend on a hillside overlooking the battlefield. And I didn't want to, not make her proud. So that gave me some strength. And
wow.
I tried to hear in my head Unchained Melody by the Righteous Brothers.
Oh my God. Oh
So
my God.
so years. I mean, it's a rags to riches story.
Yeah.
It's filled. I mean, it should be a screenplay. I just
Yeah,
told him
it
over and
sounds
over
like
again.
I'm taking notes here.
Right, right. But he ends up at the NADA show in Las Vegas with
Sure.
his dealer friend that he works for now in his
Yeah.
retirement years, and they're waiting. The Righteous Brothers are in town for a concert, and so they go to see the show. They're waiting for their limo to pick them up, at the drop off place, and doggone if I think both the Righteous Brothers were the next in line, and so he got to go over to at least one of the gentlemen and say, "Hey, I just want to tell you what your song did for me in the
Wow.
1970s." And he said
Wow.
whichever one it was. I mean, obviously it wasn't Lee Farrell, but
Yeah.
whoever it
But
was.
he was in their band. One of them passed away, I believe, a couple of years back, but
Uh,
he was in their band forever.
is that right?
Oh yeah.
So
And
cool.
I got to see him when they, were both still, alive and walking.
Uh,
And I think one of them still remains, but one of them passed away about 10 years ago, if I'm
well,
not
whichever
mistaken.
one was in tears, hearing
Yeah.
this story. And but
Yeah. Yeah.
the impact of art, as it trickles out into society is pretty wild. And that
It
has to be an
is.
experience, just having some chart success, but being able uh, to be doing it for as many years as you've done it. I know you've been on the Jerry Lewis Telethon locally, and
Yep. Yeah,
some PBS
that was a
shows.
really, really cool thing at the beginning of my career. And I was really
Oh,
blessed to be on that show. And yeah, what's really cool, it just reminded me what you said. In Europe, they love singer-songwriters, meaning
uh,
in that same vein of, and I'm not putting myself in that category, but they like the James Taylor, Bob
yeah,
Dylan type of people,
yeah.
people that sing songs that they wrote. And that's what I love about Clint Black. He writes all of his own stuff and he sings his stuff.
Hmm.
So it kind of gave me an edge in Europe because they want to hear it from the guy that wrote the song.
Uh,
That's really important to them over in Europe.
yeah.
Here in the US, it's like, oh, we met with some other publishers and we like this song and that song. And, a lot of these big stars don't actually write their own music, or the songs are already kind of finished and they say, here, why don't you add a word or two so they can get some credit? I mean, that's
Yep.
just the way it works. I
Yep.
understand that. But over in Europe, the singer songwriter is really held at a really high level.
Uh,
And that gave me a little bit of an edge over there because they want to hear it from the guy that wrote the song, interestingly enough.
that's great. The authenticity of it. Well, so back to as like you say, I mean, you want to live on the road all the time and keep that career going, or does it take a different direction
Yeah,
in
that's
a
a
couple
great way of
ways?
putting it. Thank you. Thank you for that because you're on the road with a bunch of smelly musicians in a
Yeah,
tour bus
yeah,
and it gets old real fast. And,
yeah.
I was a national accounts manager for Seagram's and we'd have meetings at Windows of the World and the original World Trade Centers. And, we actually had, believe it or not, we had a holiday party at Sparks Steakhouse.
Huh.
And about 2 weeks later, I don't know if I should mention this, but put it this way, there was a change in some families when somebody walked out of that same steakhouse.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah, like it had something to do with the Gotti family, and it was
ah,
interesting because I told my girlfriend at the time, it's like, we just had our party there. And
jeez.
this steakhouse was all over the news. But
Oh yeah,
getting
I
back
know
to
what you're
music,
talking about. I just made the connection. Yeah,
yeah, and it just happened. Everybody knows about it. But
yeah.
we were actually at that steakhouse 2 weeks before that hit happened.
Good grief.
But I was used to the high life, and then you're in a tour bus. And a lot of musicians will talk about the road sucks and all
Yeah,
this, and it really is hard.
yeah,
And that 45 minutes or hour and a half of being on stage is what you live for because it's like flying. You feel like
yeah,
you're flying over the audience. It is such a rush. And I knew when I was a kid, it's like I want to experience that, and it's terrifying.
yeah.
But once you get out there, you never want to leave. I played a couple shows in Europe with my friend Dirk Schlock, who's just the most humble but talented guy.
Hmm.
We played in front of 25,000 people. He went back to his hometown. And I mean, I was so nervous,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a pretty confident guy, but once you got out there, I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to leave. It's almost addictive. You know what I mean?
Did
It's
did you
crazy.
ever bomb? I feel like every comic who's talked about being at stand up has like you have to bomb at some
Well,
point.
as far as doing stand up, for sure, I bombed. Absolutely. Flat on my face. I still have some bumps on my head. And it's interesting about that, and I'll circle back to the music. But back in the day, I did these. They had these open mic nights at the
Yeah.
Comedy Store, and there was a place called the Comedy Store West, And Jay Leno would pop in there all the time, working
Mm.
on new material. And he talked to all of us and say, hey, you should slow down a little bit, or you might want to do this. And
Wow.
he was giving people tips. Another hero that you meet is like nicest guy
I
and
keep hearing that.
super wicked smart.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
these comedians that are successful are, incredibly intelligent people. But yeah, anyway, getting back to the music thing. So, you never really, it's hard to bomb when you're singing a song because it's kind of cool because you're playing with the net because you're just singing. I mean, there's nothing really bad that can go wrong unless you have some kind of mechanical failure or, your guitar drops or something unplugs. But what you and I learn in training is the show must go on. You never
That's
let them
right.
see you sweat. I mean, you know how it is. A bulb burns out or your books don't show up. You don't go, oh my God, the
Right.
books aren't here. What should I do?
Yeah.
You just hit the ground running.
Yep.
You just make it work. So one of the things I learned, and just like back to the tennis analogy, you just keep playing, keep the ball in, don't show any emotion on it. Just keep going,
I love
So
it.
that's really served me well. Comedy bombing for sure. But but music, not so much. I had a pretty good run at it. I never felt like, oh, that was really terrible. Or
Yeah.
I mean, some shows are better than others, and it has to do also, and you know how it is. You have different audiences. Sometimes they're kind of with you, or
Yeah.
sometimes they don't really want to be there.
Yeah.
Nobody says, hey, let's go to a seminar. This is going to be fun. They're taking me off the retail floor, and I don't get to sell cars today. Listen to Till Cars or Mark Ramsey. But we give them nuggets. That's what
Yeah.
we do, and that's our job, and make them feel like, hey, you know what? Mark said some cool stuff. Mike Marshall said some cool stuff. So I'm glad I went, and that's
Yep.
that's where kind of our gift comes in, and maybe a little bit of the stand-up comedy from time to time, if appropriate.
if appropriate, I totally agree. And it is, you're right. It's like the bar's low. They probably have been forced to be in the room, and
Big
so we can
time.
overcome that bar for sure.
Easily.
And
It's what we call prisoners in the trading
Right.
business, right?
That's right. That's right. But you didn't start just automotive training. This was sort of like an automotive side gig in between your working.
Yeah,
on your-
what happened is I started out. This is actually a very interesting story. I started out as a public speaking trainer. I went back to that company that said, "Hey, we'd like to hire you." When I took one of their seminars, by the time I got back to them, everybody in that office was gone. So they go, "No, but we're looking for somebody right now." So I thought, okay, and they put me in their 2-day class, executive presentation skills, and they said, "We're going to put you in as somebody from the liquor business, but that's your audition tape." And they loved it. They said, "You're perfect. We love you." So they wanted to hire me, but they were moving somebody out. So it was going to take a while to move them out. So I'm in the local watering hole, and I always wanted to sell cars.
Yeah.
And right next to me is this F&I manager. And I told her, I said, I was thinking about selling cars. She goes, "Oh, you'd be great." So she hooks me up with the GM of this dealership. It was a Chrysler Plymouth Isuzu Point.
Wow.
Real interesting. And Dodge. And I worked there for a couple of months while I was waiting for the other gig to come together, which worked out perfectly. At the time, I didn't know it, but
Yeah.
working the floor for 2 months, you see things and hear things that unless you've actually been in the car business, you just can't understand. It's probably like being a plumber. Unless you've been under there and this and that happened, you just don't know. So I was working as a public speaking guy, and this one guy that I was working with started working for JD Power and Associates.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be honest with you, started making 4 or 5 times more a day. Usually we have a daily rate in our business, right? I'm like, "I'd like to do what you do, sir." And he said, "Well, I'm sorry, you have to have retail car experience." I have retail car experience. So I really lucked out. It was almost like divine intervention, Thank you to the good Lord for that experience. And I had one interview with JD Power, and the rest is history. I worked in that industry forever, still do from time to time. I have some local dealers I work with, although I've kind of slowed down a little bit. But the automotive industry has been very, very good to me. And colorful people too, like the wine and spirits business, right?
Yeah.
It's like I've been very lucky that way,
Well, that is phenomenal. 2 months on the floor, and that opens up this whole, side gig to you. But I
Yeah.
agree, you can't get away from the car business. Once you're in it, they are the most colorful characters of any client I've ever had.
Unbelievable. Sometimes, my wife will bring in her car for service, and I'll just be there to support her, make sure everything goes okay. And I'll mention some things like, how many ROs you got out today and things like that. So they know, okay, this guy knows the car business, right? And sometimes I just miss being at the store.
Yep.
There's a
Yep.
lot of stuff going on, a lot of people running around. To your point, Mark, that it's just a fun business. I
Yeah.
just I love it, and I still consult with a couple dealers here locally, and it's just a fun, colorful business, just like the wine and spirits business.
Yeah.
When I was in that hotel restaurant part of it,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
fun,
Yeah.
folks.
But would you say you've got your presentation skills that you train on, and automotive? What you were doing was pure sales. I mean, when you were on the floor, it was sales.
Yes,
Um,
that's right.
it, is there are there lessons from the floor that you brought into your presentation training, your speaking skills?
Well, I'll put it this way: there's definitely some overlap. So
Yeah.
there's some things, and by the way, when I worked for that one firm in Newport Beach, I also taught selling skills. And the
Uh,
whole thing, and I know you've done stuff about Socratic stuff and
yep. Yep.
declarative questions, and tell me about, how are you feeling about this so far?
Hmm.
Eliciting an opinion before you elicit a decision, because, most of these car guys, they want to jump right to the deal. So what's it going to take to earn your business today?
Right.
And
Right.
they just
Ooh.
launch somebody out of the
Right.
store. It's like, oh, they hit their head again. So you have to elicit an opinion. How are things going so far? How do you feel about this deal? And so, well, I got to check with my wife, or it's a little
Hmm.
pricey, or I'm not really looking for a car that's this big. You know the deal. So
Yeah.
as far as selling stuff, for sure, there's some overlap. Presentation skills, for sure, because there's the body language element. Do
Yeah.
you trust the guy? So he says, "Yeah, those are original miles."
You're right.
It's like, maybe not. So you got to make eye contact. You got to look him in the eye. So for sure, there's overlap.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so I want to talk about some of the things you've done since I've known you. That's all stuff that I learned about, some in the last half hour or so. But
Sure.
all things you had done by the time you got to me. But on the project that you were on with me, I know you ended up having some local TV interviews, right?
Yeah,
Like that, like
yeah,
it just sort of blew up.
yeah. What happened there? That was kind of interesting. So I was in Phoenix. I live in, again, Orange County, but so I had some dealers in Southern California, here in
Yeah.
Orange County, and also in the Inland Empire,
Hmm.
and I spent half the month in Phoenix as well.
Hmm.
So one morning, I'm like at an Embassy Suites. We've all been there a million times, and having my free breakfast, and I see this show on TV called The Morning Scramble,
Hmm.
and I'm like, it's a local TV show, and I'm thinking, I could talk to those folks about presentation skills. Let me be in contact with them. So I put a little thing together, told them about my book, Enhancing Your Presentation Skills, and sure enough, the producer of the show, Laura, a great lady, says, we'd love to have you on the show.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, cool. It's like, wow.
You just had to ask, I guess.
I just had to ask. It's like I say, ask the pretty girl to dance, and maybe she'll say yes. She'll probably say no, but she might say yes. And that goes back to my earlier point. A lot of people will say no, but
Right.
sometimes they say yes. And, they had me on the show twice, and we had a really good time, and it went
Yeah.
real well. And then I used that footage to get on other shows, and I ended up getting on Fox Business Channel, which was major league,
Wow.
major league. Because, and what's funny about that one, Mark, it was a live remote. So this not girl,
Hmm.
lady, Jerry Willis, who had her own show, an hour-long show in the afternoon,
Hmm.
had me on, and they picked me up with a limo and drove me to the local LA Fox affiliate.
Hmm.
And I'm sitting there in a little chair in this little box you're looking at, and you have an earpiece, and boom, you hit the ground running. I
Jeez.
was terrified, but you can't tell because, I was having a good time and I had some answers plugged away and
Yeah.
we had a good time. So
So
it was
that,
really interesting how I turned that into a couple of a very local morning show into getting on the Fox Business Channel, which if you want to do keynote speeches, which I do a lot of, like I'll do a keynote speech for a company in Vegas or something. I love those, hour long, hour and a half, and just really fun. Distill down your best lines and things, and it all led to that because of some of those TV spots. It's like, wow, this guy's been on TV. He must know what he's talking about.
not
So
crazy. It's
I
crazy.
just take a swing, bro. I get in the batter's box.
Well, and we've talked about this a little bit, but you did your Strengths Finder assessment,
Yes.
and
Yes.
you had I guess you maybe we should explain it to people, but I know Woo was one of yours, right?
Yeah, we did
Winning
the
over
strengths.
others.
Yeah, the Strengths Finder thing is interesting. It was a really expensive test, and when I took it, because I was going to deliver the test
Oh,
and administer it, they said, "Well, we're going to let you take it for free." And I thought, "Wow, this is an expensive test. I'm going to take this opportunity to be as honest as I possibly can. Take this opportunity to really give
mhm.
honest answers." And they give you this big packet back, kind of like a CEM thing, all the things
Yep.
about you, and they give you one little tagline, and mine was, "You're a focused wooer." And I thought, man, they nailed it, or I was very honest, or both.
Well, but think about that. You start with Gallo telling them, "Can I be honest with you? What I'd really like to do is," and he says, "Oh, I know what you'd be good for." And
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
fast forward to Germany,
yeah,
they like to hear the authentic singer-songwriter, and then here you are saying, "Well, authentically, this is who I am."
yeah.
And it gives you a little insight into how you're able to make some phone calls and land some things that lead to some things, or talk to some people who know some people, and it
And
it
it's
snowballs.
it's really true. I mean, getting a song that this guy Dirk Schlock, we had so much success in Europe, number one with my music, but writing music for other people. And then he
Mm.
got me involved with Blue Moon, which is a group that I was involved with, and he did some guitar work on that.
Huh.
And Dirk approached me, and it's a good thing that I still speak German because typically we speak in German, although most Germans speak English pretty
Yeah.
proficiently.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Dirk, and he said, I'd really like to be on some kind of either American, with an American artist or on TV or something. And I contacted another friend that I'd known from a songwriting standpoint from back in I'm going to say early 90s, a guy named Craig Lackey, real talented guy, lives in Nashville.
Mm.
And I said, Craig, I've got this guy. He's really talented. He's a great producer and he wants to break into the American scene. He said, well, I live in Nashville. And this guy's, by the way, killer, great songwriter.
Mm.
And he says, getting a song to an artist is virtually impossible, unless
Mm.
you went to high school with him or
Yep.
you already have this great string of Grammy hits. Forget about it.
Yep. Yep.
So he said, well, let me hear some of this guy's stuff. This is Dirk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I sent him some of the files and he goes, man, this guy's a great track guy, meaning he produces wonderful tracks. He said, I'll tell
Mm-hmm.
you what, why don't you and I, this is Craig talking,
Mm-hmm.
write lyrics for his song, his music,
Mm.
and then try to get that on film or TV because that there's an open door there. I mean, it's still,
Yeah.
again, third time, sorry. But let's try to do that. And I said, sure. So we got Dirk involved, and with the internet, you can, swap files back and forth, which is kind of cool. And we wrote a couple of songs together. We submitted that to a publisher. And then we had one more song called Sleepless Nights.
Yeah.
And I said, guys, and I really pushed for it. I said, we got to get that to that same publisher because I think that's the best song out of the three. And Craig and Dirk are kind of like, oh, Till's doing his focused wooer thing again, kind of like, here he goes. And isn't it funny? That's the song that got on the Young and the Restless.
That's on the
Had
Young
I
and the
not
Restless.
pushed for that, and that was a little bit of my business side coming out, like, come on, guys, let's get another one. Let's throw another hat in the ring. And that was the song that got on the show.
I saw the clip. I was a child with a mother in the 1980s. Therefore, I intimately knew the Victor they were talking about, the characters were talking about, over top of the song that was playing.
Yeah. Oh wow,
So,
that's so
you know
cool,
what I mean?
man.
Like,
thank you for sharing that.
Victor,
Thank you for
Cricket, I
sharing
knew all those characters. It was great to revisit.
That's cool.
But
That's
that
cool.
that was kind of fun. And but that's so you got a guy in Nashville who had connections with. I mean, I'm assuming the show is shot in L.A. or.
Oh yeah, it's shot in L.A., but he had a connection with a publisher that's
Wow.
based in L.A. also, but he lives in Nashville. But with the internet,
Oh
it's
yeah.
all different now.
Well, and
But
Nashville is crazy for
oh, it's
entertainment.
crazy, and the level of talent is like I wouldn't want to walk on a stage with a guitar in Nashville. I would be
Yeah.
terrified because the level of talent is through the roof.
You're not
unbelievable.
Wrong. You're not wrong.
It's really incredible, Mark. And I know that a lot about music too, but it's really a telling tale because here's a guy in Germany. Craig's in Nashville, and I
Yeah.
get these guys together, and then I push them for that third song because you have to have the files. These publishers want vocal only files and then instrument only files, and it takes a while to put it all together. In the meantime, Dirk's on the road with this super group in Germany, and I'm bugging about files, and he's playing in front of thousands of people every night. He's like, oh, my friend Till, I like him, but a little bit of a pain in the rear end there, but it got us on TV, and he was over the moon about it. Dirk was, and so was Craig. And I thank both of those guys because it was a team effort. I mean, a total team effort. Without those two guys, it wouldn't have happened.
We've talked about the Young and the Restless, but are you allowed to talk about what's coming up this holiday season?
Yeah, I've got a song out, and it's actually called Snowy Night that I co-wrote with a guy named Steve Cullum, who's a phenomenal writer. And basically we wrote the song together, and he's a great musician, which I always need a lot of help with the musical part of it because I'm really more of a lyricist. I'm a pretty darn good lyricist, but the music part, I can play a little guitar and I can come up with melodies and tunes, but I always need great music people by my side, So the name of the movie has not been released, but it'll be out all over social media as soon as it is. But the movie is done, and they typically add the music at the very end of the film. So it's been produced. We got paid for the licensing fee and all that.
Yeah.
So it's in the movie, but they won't release exactly. Is it going to be Hallmark or Hulu or Apple or whatever? But believe me, I'll make a lot of noise about it when that comes out because one last time, getting in the movies. Okay. I mean, impossible. In fact, some of my co-writers from other songs and some other publishers like, how did you, do that? So, hey, you just, again, ask the pretty girl to dance. You might say yes.
I love it. I love it. And the fact that it is in several different areas kind of proves your point, right?
It does, and it served me well. And again, getting back to tennis, where it kind of all began, I started to realize, keep the ball in play. Don't beat yourself. Don't make too many unforced errors. Hit high percentage shots. Stay in there. Hang in there. You never know what'll happen. Can't win them all, but let's try to win a few,
I love it. So let me ask you a couple more questions that are sort of around the kinds of things you're doing right now. Obviously, we're going to link to a lot of this stuff, but you have a book.
Yep.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the...
Yeah, the book's been out a long time, called Enhancing Your Presentation Skills, and really has all the basics from head to toe on what to do, which, if and when appropriate, I'm happy to share with your audience. I can give them some basics if you'd like. But it was really a labor of love because I was working for a lot of other companies before I started my own business.
Yeah.
And you really learn things just by doing it. I mean, I've taught probably 10 to 20,000 people if you throw in the keynotes on public speaking. And there's just certain things that you learn. And I just thought, I need to point those things out in the book. I mean, there are plenty of books out there on presentation
There
skills or
are.
anything else,
Yeah.
right? But I
Yeah.
wanted to put it in the book. And again, you have more credibility that way as a speaker, as a keynote speaker, to have a book. People kind of like it. And then, oh, can you sign the book for me and all that? It's
Yeah.
kind of a cool thing.
So, if you were to pick maybe one or two things out of the book that have, you've sort of seen the impact of, like, what are some of the things that,
Sure.
it could be very basic if you wanted
Yeah,
to.
yeah. One of the great, tent poles or pillars of presentation skills is going to be eye contact.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is when you and I are looking at each other, when you're having a conversation with one person, your wife or a dealer or whatever, that's one thing. But in a public situation, it gets real tricky because what happens is there's a lot of people out there and they do this. It's what we call scanning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's typical 99.9% of people. Wow, there's a lot of people out there. And you get visually overstimulated. It's also called aerosol eyes. And when you spray the audience, all of a sudden you get brain freeze. And the thing is, when adrenaline shoots through your body, time slows down. So you get that sensation, I was up there forever. 2 seconds turn into 2 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So the one cornerstone and tent pole or pillar of my book is called lock, talk, and pause. So you lock in with one person, you talk to that person, and then you pick out somebody else and you lock in with that person.
Hmm.
And once you get that down, it gets you into a rhythm, and then it slows you down so you can start to get a handle on things. Now I'm going to do a little parlor trick real quick to explain the other great pillar here, and work with me on this one. I'm going to ask you 2 questions in rapid succession. If people are watching, I want them to react as well. So answer these questions as quickly as you can. Ready?
I'm ready.
What color is this?
White.
What do cows drink?
Milk. Wait a minute. Hold
They
on.
drink. I got you.
Hey, I'm going to be.
What everybody does. You probably know this one anyway, right?
Well, I watched a lot of your YouTube clips to get ready for this,
okay.
so but I played along anyway because
Uh-oh. I got you. You're cheating. But, getting back
Yeah.
to this, and my line is, in a
Yeah.
world where cows drink milk, you better look your best. So, meaning that what threw you off was the physical part. Albert Merhabian, a famous psychologist, a lot of people talk about this. You probably talked about it. Says that 93% of what you remember is really body language, which
Right.
is the vocal energy and your body language, and people don't really remember words.
Yeah.
And people say, "Oh, well, that's not true." I'll say, "Okay, you've been to college?
Yeah.
What do you remember?"
Right.
"Oh, yeah, the parties and this and that."
Yeah.
So exhibit A. That's kind of my ha on that.
Yeah.
But so let's break it down. So you're nervous. So now you have the lock, talk, and pause. You're focusing a couple words here, maybe a sentence there, and you do it completely random. You don't do it in like this row and then that row or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you use that adrenaline to release some of the steam out of the pot, so to speak, because you're nervous. So if you talk about, hey, we had a tremendous increase at our dealership, well, let's see it. Let's see that increase. And that releases some of the energy. Or we've got a small problem that we need to fix. So what you're doing is you're using descriptive gestures to mirror what you're saying. So these are kind of like paintbrushes, as opposed to just doing this the whole time. This is what we call aquatic gestures. Looks like you're a fish,
Yeah.
So be descriptive with your gestures. And it doesn't mean you have to be like a juggler, constantly gesturing all the time. But maybe once a minute, you talk about an increase or a decrease, or we need to work together as a team. Paint that for me, and people will remember. So those are 2 of the great pillars of presentation skills. And the other last thing is actually 2 more things. Pause.
Yeah.
And slow down. And here's the thing that I learned on my own that I didn't learn through any other companies. If you set a precedent of fast delivery, you're backing yourself into a corner, right? So if you slow down, you and I talk for a living. Sometimes when we start saying something, it's like, nah, I don't want to go there. If you're talking slow you can back out. I had another thought,
Yeah,
and
right.
nobody knows that you were almost going to say something you didn't want to say. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? And then and you have people hang on every word as opposed to
yep.
just getting it out as quickly as possible. So those are really the basics. I'm going to say right there
I,
in Cornerstone.
that that last bit is really well said because again, back to a little bit of the theme here that has just emerged is it is more authentic, right? And
Yeah,
if I'm slower, I'm intentionally being slow, which is if you're authentically doing that, right?
right,
I'm doing it from a place of wanting to make sure you understand and that I'm
right.
processing, correctly
It,
for you.
it is such a good point, and I had the great privilege and honor of working for the Toyota Motor Corporation for
Mm-hmm.
about 5 years, and they sent me over to Nagoya, where their world headquarters is.
I'm so
Which,
jealous.
oh man, it was. Let me tell you, it
Yeah,
was the best.
yeah,
And one of the things the guy that hired me, and then subsequent to having been over there, they sent me back a second time. They said,
mm,
we like the fact that you talk very clearly and slowly, and that really resonated with us.
mm-hmm.
And I thought, yeah, because a lot of times American English is kind of
Yep,
like that, but if you slow down and you speak very clearly, people get the point,
yep.
and it served me well in my career. I actually met members of the Toyota family over there. You
Oh,
spell it YDA,
yeah, yeah,
and they
yeah,
change it to TA here.
yeah,
And then I thought to myself, wow, I had a chance to meet Elena Ford too,
yeah.
which is
Right.
so cool. You did too,
Yeah, yeah.
obviously, right? And I mean, to meet members of the Ford family, the Toyota family. I mean, the car business. My last name is Kahrs, so kind of forced to be in the industry at birth, as I like to say.
And you can't leave it. That's what we've all learned. Let me
Yeah.
ask one other thing, and I don't know that you're going to have a big insight you want to share necessarily,
Okay.
but I know we've been talking a lot about presentation, but I believe you've got a keynote called "Listening to Win,"
Yeah.
and I wonder, listening is instead of the output, it's the input. And what you're doing with that, and I don't know if you're necessarily thinking about it in terms of presentations or if it's more for sales, but like how do you see listening to
Yeah. No,
win?
I've got an answer for you there. So, listening to win is really more about communication. It's not about presenting. Obviously, you want to listen to what the audience wants, but that work is done kind of ahead of time. So, if
Yeah,
I'm giving a keynote speech, which is more output, tell me about your company and what your people might want to know about. That's done ahead of time.
yeah,
Listening to win is really about opening up the dialogue with Socratic openers, meaning, or openers, as I like to call them. So you would say something like, I can talk about presentation skills, and I've been doing this for 30, 35 years, but tell me a little bit about what you're looking to do. I
mm,
mean, I have a million answers, but until I know what they want,
yeah,
I don't want to say a word.
yeah,
And it's just a better way of doing it. It's like you go in to see a doctor and they start telling you about different medications. Well,
oh
wait a
boy,
minute. You got to find out what the problem is
yeah,
first.
amen,
And that's really what it's about. But it's also about personal connection. In other words, and I'm a little bit of a windbag here today, and that's kind of set up that way. And
yeah,
you've been a great facilitator in letting me do that. But in actuality, when I'm doing my consulting stuff, I listen much more than I talk.
yeah,
Tell me more about that, or
mm-hmm,
why did you say that? Because I'm getting smarter if I'm not talking.
yep,
If I'm doing all the talking, especially up front, I'm not learning a darn thing. I'm just hearing myself say the same old stuff.
right.
But I'm a good listener.
I
And
had
it's
a
interesting because I got a real compliment from my wife, who happens to be a social worker, and she says,
uh,
you would have been a great social worker because you're a good listener. And most people think, oh, he's just this windbag talking about his hits and his seminars and everything. But I think I'm a pretty good listener too, and it's served me well. You have to have both.
yeah, sure, sure. I had a meeting one time with a management team at a car dealership. It was in deep eastern Kentucky, and the dealer's son was going on and on about an initiative, and we need to do this thing, and here's the proof, and it's so clear,
Yeah.
and I can't remember even what the initiative was. He may very well have been correct. He was very intelligent, yeah, but he had to leave early and left the room. And I believe it was the general sales manager, was an older gentleman. He sat there. There's 5 seconds of silence after the guy left the room, and he said, "Boys, I've never learned nothing talking all the time." And it was a death knell. It was a death knell moment. It just the store actually sold. It actually sold.
You know what? I'll give you one of those, and we can wrap it up if you have to. But I'll never forget this. I was up in Seattle, and one of the things we did with one of the car seminars was we'd send people home using these skills. Oh, tell me more about that, or why do you say that? That's very interesting. Tell me more, and that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
Probing type of information, as opposed to just whatever, just bobbing your head.
Yeah.
So I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go home tonight, and I want you to try this stuff on your family. See how long you can keep them talking. Everybody's laughing, like, oh, my wife, talks too much. And I said, well, on that one you use tell me more some other time. But anyway, so this one guy comes back, and I said, I want some stories in the next day. This is your homework assignment. So, you leave it kind of on a positive note, but you want to show the power of this stuff. It really works. It's not just seminar BS.
Yeah.
So this guy comes back the next day, and he's really solemn, and he's hesitant to talk. I said, Bob, what's going on over here? He goes, well, and he was very serious. He goes, these skills are so incredibly powerful. My son came home from football practice, and he didn't want to talk, but using some of the skills that you shared with us, he started telling me that his coach wants him to take steroids. And he feels uncomfortable doing that.
Wow.
And everybody's like, you could hear a pin drop. It's like, wow. And that was a real story, which, as you know, just like myself, the real stories are the best ones.
Yeah. So I will end it on a high note. A very similar story that you'll appreciate. Mike and I often get to team train together, facilitate together. And sometimes we do it under the brand name that I have called Hip Socket. And
right.
So we had a similar experience. We kept telling them, the professional stuff works with the personal stuff. Go use it.
Yeah.
And so the next month we're asking for bright spots. Tell us some good stories.
Right. The old bright spots. Yeah.
We had several, folks who were. It was serious stuff like, a child who was depressed. A spouse who was really unhappy, things that were happening in personal lives that the spouse was not aware of until they went home and asked some questions and tried to come in with a curious mind, and that was all really serious. And then one guy said, I've realized about 3 weeks out from having seen you guys that my wife will say something along the lines of, so when are you going to another one of those hip socket sessions? So, this stuff works. It does work. It does work.
That's great, man. That's great. Love it. Love it. Stories are the best, aren't they?
Well, is there anything, we're going to link to all your stuff in the show notes. Kahrs is TILLKAHRS. If people search for you on the internet, you are who pops up.
That's it. I'll definitely pop up there. And I'm blessed to have some stuff out there and some useful information. Some of the stuff that I talk about, and the reality show trailer is on there, and that has a lot of the skills that I just talked about. Some other stuff, especially my YouTube channel. If you look at YouTube,
you got a
put
ton
my name
of clips.
There's really helpful stuff there.
Yeah,
and happy to share it with your audience. And it's just been a real privilege and honor to be on one of your podcasts. I've just thoroughly enjoyed it. You're a great interviewer, by the way. There's jobs opening at late night these days. So.
Well, I just like learning about people. I've actually wanted to ask you many of these questions for years now, and I get the excuse to do it. So I appreciate you saying that. But it's easy when people are interesting, and you are.
Thank you. Well, I think I've had it's funny. I had lunch with my son the other day. He's just finishing his first year of nursing school. And he said, Dad, you've had a pretty interesting life. I said, yeah, probably have. It's his birthday today, too, by the way.
Oh, well, happy birthday.
Happy birthday to him.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Well, Till, thanks for coming on. You possibly know our colleague John Wolfe, who
Yes.
for years was a voiceover artist, and he is the person, I don't know if you knew this, but he is the guy who does our intro and closing narration. So,
I did not, as Johnny Carson used to say, I did not know that.
All right, I'll stop the
Cool.
record now.
That sounds good. I can't wait to see this, Mark. Thank you so much. And again, congrats on the 300 plus to you and Mike. That's just awesome.
Well, I appreciate that, and we're looking forward to talking more.
Sounds good, man. Thank you, sir.
So go ahead and tweet that, or share it any other way you want. As always, there are no rights reserved, no trademarks, no copyrights. Share it if you want to. And join us next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius.
That's good enough.